Hunan, China. Early morning, May 2026. At 2 a.m. Many residents were still asleep as the sound of rain slowly grew louder outside their windows. No one imagined that, just a few hours later, entire neighborhoods would disappear under floodwater. Cars were swept away like toys. 23 towns fell into chaos. 19,000 people were forced to evacuate in the middle of the night. And the most terrifying part was not the flood itself, but the feeling that everything happened so fast that people no longer had time to escape. Welcome back to Natural Destruction, where we do not only witness disasters, but also the human stories, the real fears and the lessons nature is leaving behind for all of Asia. That evening, in Hunan, everything still felt normal. Stores were still brightly lit. Street restaurants were still crowded. Many families were preparing to sleep after a long day. Outside, it was only the familiar sound of summer rain. No one realized it would be the last night they would see their homes untouched. That has always been the scariest thing about disasters. You never know which night will change your life forever. This weather system pulled enormous amounts of moisture from the South China Sea, the Bay of Bengal, and the Pacific region. What worried many experts was that the storm clouds seemed almost stationary over Hunan for hours. The rain would not stop. The water slowly began rising. At first, many people still believed it will probably end soon. But that is what often happens before major disasters. People always hope everything will be fine, until nature pushes beyond human limits. Around midnight, residents in Hunan County started realizing something was wrong. The water was rising faster than usual, much faster, so fast that many people did not have time to move their cars, did not have time to carry belongings upstairs, did not have time to react. Within a short period of time, streets turned into rivers. Brown floodwater rushed violently through residential areas. Cars were swept away like leaves. Many underground garages were completely submerged. The sound of rescue sirens echoed through the darkness. And the most terrifying part was that nobody knew how much higher the water would rise. 23 towns in Hunan County were seriously affected. More than 19,000 people were forced to evacuate. At least 4 people lost their lives. But sometimes, numbers make us forget the real emotions behind them. 4 people dead only takes a few seconds to read, but for their families, that empty space will remain for the rest of their lives. One room will stay permanently dark. One phone call will never be answered again. One dinner table will always be missing someone. That is the part no camera can fully capture.
你看别个在小区里面，满天了，这不是1楼2楼也不远了吧？啊，外面，在马路上面，全部不远了。
If you are still watching right now, then maybe you can also feel that disasters are no longer distant stories anymore. Natural Destruction will continue bringing you the most honest stories and deeper analysis of disasters happening around the world. And if you would like to support the channel on this journey, you can help by subscribing so we can continue sharing these stories with more people. What made this flood so dangerous was not only the amount of rain, but the speed. Many residents said they had never seen the water rise this fast before. That is the greatest fear of modern flooding, not simply because the water is deeper, but because people now have less time to escape. And what is truly alarming is, events like this are becoming more common across Asia. Many people think this is just a natural disaster, but the reality is far more complicated. Hunan has a very complex mountainous landscape. When enormous amounts of water rush down from higher elevations, they collide directly with heavily urbanized concrete cities, and once drainage systems fail, roads become blocked, transportation collapses. The city almost completely loses its ability to resist. That is why many experts now believe modern disasters are not only about nature, they are also warnings that many cities are becoming increasingly fragile in the age of climate change.
西瓜还泡啥大呢？要吃西瓜的就来呀！免费送来的，自己来折。这要吃就西瓜的就来折，全是的10几万斤呢。
广场全部冲成这个样，小卖铺的东西都冲出来，天灾。
因为路上马路上面全部淹了，那个桥也即将覆没了。这个路上。
Amid the endless rain in Hunan, some people could only stand silently and stare at the sky. In moments like that, money, cars, and modern buildings suddenly feel very small. Many families began praying, not because they were certain a miracle would happen, but because sometimes faith is the last thing keeping people from collapsing during disaster. In many Asian cultures, people believe nature has its own spirit, and whenever floods or earthquakes happen, many begin asking themselves, is this only a disaster? Or is it a reminder that humanity cannot continue ignoring nature forever? Outside, the rain still had not stopped. Many areas began losing electricity. The sound of water crashing against doors sounded almost like ocean waves. Many families climbed to higher floors, waiting for rescue. Imagine the feeling of a father carrying his child through rising floodwater, not knowing whether rescue teams could reach them, whether the house would still be standing by morning, or what their lives would look like tomorrow. That is the kind of fear that is difficult to describe with words. Disasters always leave painful lessons behind. The first lesson, never underestimate weather warnings. The second lesson, a modern city is not always safe against nature. And the final lesson, what saves people most during disaster is often not technology, but human compassion. Maybe after every disaster, what keeps humanity standing is not concrete or machines alone, but the belief that even after darkness, people can still begin again. As the lights slowly return across Hunan, many people will begin rebuilding their lives from nothing. The roads will eventually be cleaned. The stores will reopen. The cities will light up once again. But for many families, life will never completely feel the same again. And perhaps that is the most terrifying thing about disasters. They remind people how quickly everything can disappear. This has been Natural Destruction, and we will see you again in the next video.